right.
Ready? All right. All right, then the next organism is Giardia Lamblia. And this organism, and I know that one of the things in the notes talk about contaminated water sources, and we also had another organism that we talked about water contamination, and that was Cryptosporidium. So the key for you to be able to answer questions between these two organisms, they're both protozoans, but Giardia Lamblia is a flagellate, and Cryptosporidium is a sporozoan. So that'll help you to distinguish those two. And actually, Giardia Lamblia would be usually more in contaminated waters like you would find out in the environment, like creeks and rivers and such as that, and maybe a breakdown in well systems. So this is kind of like more of a rural organism. And Cryptosporidium is when big cities have a breakdown in their chlorination process. And so, and actually this is a chlorine-resistant organism, and so it actually has to be the filtering process that gets rid of this organism. And so there have been major breakdowns or breakouts with Cryptosporidium. So those are two organisms. They're both protozoans, but Giardia Lamblia is a flagellate and Cryptosporidium is a sporozoan. And then lastly, we have Hepatitis A, B, and C. Be sure that you know how each one of those are transmitted because each one's unique. Go back to your notes and check that out. And they are viruses. And then our last system is the genitourinary tract. And there, thankfully for us, there's not as many organisms in the genitourinary system. And the first one that we're going to put up is Candida albicans. Candida albicans is a yeast. So let me go get my fungi color, which is aqua. It's a yeast, so that makes it a fungus. And it's an opportunistic organism, so when somebody has their disruption in their vaginal flora, this organism can take over. And then the rest of the organisms that we have are all cause STDs. The first one is Trichomonas Vaginalis. And the technical word for that disease is trichomoniasis, and it is a protozoan, and it's a flagellate. It doesn't have a cyst stage though, and so for that reason, that's why it's only transmitted by intimate contact, because it doesn't have any way to survive out in the environment. And then you have Neisseria gonorrhea. And be sure you go back and review all of the information. We've already stated this is a gram-negative diplococci. And also pay special attention to the conjunctivitis that we've already discussed in the newborns. You have chlamydia, trachomatis, which is actually, it's an STD that is more prevalent than Neisseria gonorrhea. But the two travel together, and so usually if they diagnose them with one, they treat them for both. And then the organism, and chlamydia, the gram stain's not helpful to us. And then Treponema pallidum, and that causes syphilis. It's a spirochete, so it's kind of like a little corkscrew organism, but the gram stain doesn't help us there. The main thing that we, in our notes, the main thing we want to pay attention to is what happens in congenital syphilis, so when syphilis gets transmitted to a baby. And the other thing is how we diagnose it through serology as opposed to any kind of visualization of the organism or any culturing. And then we have herpes simplex, and that's a virus, herpes simplex virus. There's 1 and 2. There's crossover here between the two. Generally, not 1, we think of cold sores, and 2 is the STD, but there can be some crossover between those. And then there's human papillomavirus that causes genital warts. And there's now a vaccine, Gardasil, that we use, that can be used to prevent it, because some of the strains, there's 200 different strains of the human papillomavirus. There's just a few that can lead later on in life to cervical cancer. So the Gardasil is used to prevent that. And so there you have it. All of the important stuff of the last 6 chapters. Happy studying.